What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing more truckers encounters. So I've covered a lot of groups of people and their strange and oftentimes paranormal encounters here on this channel throughout the years. And one of the most viewed videos is that of truckers' bizarre encounters while out there on the open roads. I could see how and why these particular types of people are oftentimes seemingly more prone to running into something paranormal, supernatural, or just all around strange and or mysterious. So I was finally able to find enough encounters to put together another video and figured I would do that just due to how successful the first video on that same subject seemingly was. Truckers are often on the lonely open roads at night, and not a single one of the many truckers I've known throughout my life doesn't have at least one story of running into something while traversing the endless expanse of back roads, shortcuts, and highways of the country, especially and particularly at nights. I will admit that most of the time the stories could be chalked up to something reasonable or have a rational explanation, but in the stories I'm bringing to you all today, that just it can't be the case. These encounters defy all reason and explanation, and I am very excited to get started because you guys have been asking for this for a while, so let's jump right in. Our first encounter comes from Reddit user MopoBoy, and he posted about an experience he said his brother had in the early 2000s while out on the open road, driving on his way back from Pennsylvania into New Jersey. His brother had decided that he was too tired to continue driving, and so he pulled up behind two other trucks, parked, and tried to get some sleep. The night, though, was anything but peaceful. The poster said about it, quote, "In the early morning, he heard someone bang on his right door. He quickly jumps from the sleeping compartment and grabs his bat. As he looks out the window, there's no one there, but now there's a bang on the left side. Freaked out, he looks out that window and there's nothing but silence now. He's trying to figure out what the F is going on. Seconds later, banging on both doors simultaneously. He said the banging was so loud and heavy that the whole truck was shaking. Both curtains open, he can see there's no one out there. He quickly jumps into the driver's seat and starts the truck. He sees the other two trucks ahead of him doing the exact same thing. He said he felt as if they had all experienced the same thing," end quote. Yeah, that sounds to me like something more mischievous than actually dangerous, but it's still creepy nonetheless. And if you're not always involved in the paranormal community, something like that could be terrifying. It could be life-changing. Next, we have poster Charlie's Eye, who said he was out on a late-night trucking run when he, quote, "came to a part of the road that is a huge hill, low point, and huge hill again, but with nothing but forest all around," end quote. Here's what he would continue on about his mysterious encounter. He said, quote, "As I crest the hill, I see an orange van on its side at the very bottom of the hill and a woman standing in a wedding dress next to it. I slow down and see that she's covered in blood. Holy poop. This is way before cell phones, so I slowly pass, taking in her calm expression, her blood-stained wedding dress, the undercarriage of that orange van, and pulled over to the right, slightly past the wreckage. I get out of my car, look back, and nothing. There was nothing there but empty, dark road. I freak out, speed home, hoping a cop would pull me over. I still don't know what I saw," end quote. It sounds to me like this person maybe stumbled upon some residual energy, or more than likely he has some abilities he hasn't quite come to terms with, or that he doesn't know that he has. It's not very often someone will see such a dramatic and realistic scene so clearly right in front of them, and it only happens, to them one time. That is, it could be residual, but I would say he probably has some abilities that kind of activated for whatever reason. Maybe that night he had something else going on and he was highly emotional. I don't think we'll ever get the answers, though, because that's the end of that post. I found this next one in the publication The Mirror, and it is beyond creepy. I know a lot of people draw the line at believing in all of the ghostly hitchhiker or phantom passenger stories, but I do tend to give people the benefit of the doubt more, and I absolutely believe this encounter story. Otherwise, if you know me, you know it wouldn't be in here. This particular trucker was a part of a convoy that was driving through an unnamed region of Argentina when he saw a somewhat ethereal-looking woman on the side of the road. She was wearing a black dress, and it was a strange enough sight that he looked in his rearview mirror to see if she had really been there or not, as the sighting had been so surprising to see out there in the middle of nowhere. And when he did look in the rearview mirror, he saw that he was seemingly alone. The woman was seemingly gone. So even though he didn't see her anymore, he was rightfully so, he was concerned, right? Because this woman is seemingly standing out there in the middle of nowhere, and, you know, it's just a dangerous place for a lone woman to be standing at night in Argentina, you know, the side of this lonely, desolate road. So also, I think he might have thought he was seeing things. I think there was a little bit of that going on, but he was concerned and decided to radio the other truckers in the convoy and ask them if they had seen a woman wearing a black dress just randomly standing there on the side of the road. He was absolutely horrified and creeped out, and so was I when I read this, when the guy directly behind him told him that that same woman was clinging to the back of his rig as he continued to speed along down the highway. As he and the man driving behind him watched in horror, the woman clung to the back of his rig for several miles before vanishing into thin air, as they do. Our witness would soon find out that every single person in the convoy had seen the woman clinging to the back of his rig, and they were all so scared and freaked out that they skipped their plans to stop for the night in a nearby city and drove straight through. There's allegedly photos that were taken of this specter, but I looked all over the internet and I could not find them. However, despite the photos, a lack of proof isn't a lack of truth. And I think that the woman noticed someone noticing her, as most spirits will immediately do, and that she probably had a message for him and might have had no idea at all that what she was doing would be so terrifying to the human beings around the rig that night. She could also have been desperate, right? It also could have been something malignant and evil that either wanted to or did attach itself to the witness because of something it saw on his energy or something. But again, we'll never know, because that's where that encounter ends. When I tell you, when I pictured this black garbed woman clinging to the back, oh my God, clinging to the back of this guy's truck as he sped down the highway. Oh my gosh. I can't even tell you how just creeped out I was. Not scared per se, but just, oh, can you imagine? I have chills and goosebumps just thinking about it right now. So I found this next story anonymously posted on Reddit, and it's from a witness who was driving throughout the night in Pennsylvania. He said, quote, "My first couple of years, I was a night driver, so it was hard to see things sometimes. But the one in Pennsylvania was me trying to follow a flatbedder who was hauling serious butt through the mountains. At one point, I start to fall back because I can feel the van starting to lean. It wasn't long after that I reached down to take a swig of the handy monster I had, and I looked up, and there's a guy standing off to the shoulder just outside of the tree line wearing what appeared to be some type of soldier's uniform." Monster, by the way, is an energy drink for those of you that don't know. Looked like Revolutionary Era. He had a musket as well. As I approached, I could see him staring right at me, and then he starts walking back into the tree line, but still looking at me. Before he managed to make it through the trees, he disappeared. Like, literally vanished into thin air. I had my windows down, and the air in that area got really cold. After about a mile, the air warmed up again. I had a really sad feeling come over me for a while afterwards. Needless to say, I didn't stop for the rest of my shift." End quote. This is a typical empathic encounter, and I don't doubt in the least that this man saw a lost soul, a wandering Revolutionary Era soldier who was confused and possibly wandering in an endless loop, unfortunately, trying to figure out what's happening and not realizing more than likely that he was dead. Sometimes the spirit, when they're wandering like that, will see things as they were when they were suddenly killed or when they died suddenly, and it's quite possible that when the soldier walked out of the woods and saw the highway and the big rig truck, he fled back into the forest where he felt safe and where things were more familiar and known to him. What I mean by that is sometimes, to the best of my knowledge, the spirit will see things. So take that soldier, for example. He was seeing the world still as it was when he died, in that era that he died in. So he must have like walked out of the woods, at least in the general vicinity of where he died, right? So when he walked out of that general vicinity, he's suddenly in, you know, whenever this, sometime in the year 2000s, and he's from like the 1700s or whatever. That's got to be scary and terrifying. And this is always sad because in my experience, a lot of the time these spirits are earthbound for really no reason other than that they're sad and confused, and there's been no one who has come across them that could provide the light that would lead them home and to peace. I pray that lost soldier is on the other side now, resting and getting ready to come back for more. As far as the witness, I'm sure it scared him witless, but his empathy overtook him and he's able to see it more clearly for what it was. Our next encounter is also from Reddit and comes from a trucker in Missouri in the United States. He said, quote, I stopped at an off-ramp to stretch out and take a breather. As I'm smoking a cigarette, a little girl from some direction I couldn't figure out giggles and says, hi, mister. My initial reaction was, the F is a little kid doing out here at this time? So I talk back and say hi. She then responds with, quote, my mommy says you'll be okay. Don't worry, end quote. Now, utterly confused, I ask her what she means. No response. Then suddenly I feel like somebody is standing next to me, but it doesn't feel negative or bad, just feels like someone is right there next to me. Since it didn't have a negative vibe to it, I just finished my cigarette and left. Later on down the road, I realized that I forgot to fuel up at my last stop when the warning light came on. So I scrambled to look at my GPS and find the nearest truck stop. I find one and set the course. As I roll up to the truck stop, my truck starts sputtering and I barely make it to the fuel line before the truck starts dying. I ran out of fuel right as I got to the fuel line. It wasn't until I was fueling up that it occurred to me what the hell happened at my last stop, end quote. Fuel line meaning the line. He got in line to get gas or petrol, fuel. All I wrote here was interesting. So our next encounter comes from poster Hardspank916, who was driving a truck for Costco at the time. He was working doing extra toy shipments for the holiday season. His experience disturbed him greatly, and he said about it, quote, we got a call that one of our locations in rural Kentucky needed to restock their giant Spider-Man dolls. They knew I was a fast driver, so I was given the last minute late night duty. I loaded my truck and headed out to the 265. It was around 3 a.m. when I started to have this eerie feeling. I chalked it up to my just being tired and popped a couple of no-dos. About 15 minutes later, the road started to fog up. I mean, more so than any other time before or since. It got to the point where I had to pull off to the side of the road and wait. There wasn't any other cars on the road and I wasn't ahead of time, so I figured I could wait until it cleared a little bit. About 5 minutes of sitting still in silence, my truck goes dead. No lights, no engine, no nothing. I try my CB but cannot get anyone on it. I checked my cell phone and there was no signal. As I'm sitting there contemplating my next move, I hear what sounds like a child crying. It slowly morphed into a woman crying, or at least that's what it sounded like to me. Now, I'm a big man, 6'3", 250 pounds, but at that moment, I refused to exit my cab. I did roll down my window and ask if anyone needed help. At that point, the crying stopped. Then I heard what sounded like a sinister laugh. At that point, I felt like the laughter was directed at me. I rolled up my window, and it seemed like the more scared I became, the louder the laugh went. Then, as soon as it started, it stopped. And just like that, my truck started back up, and the fog dissipated. I drove out of there like a bat out of hell. I get to my next truck stop and pull in. I run into the bathroom and pour water on my face and ask myself, did that really just happen? I go out to the diner and see this fella in a John Deere hat, red flannel, and blue jeans. I needed to know if anyone else had ever experienced that too. I go up to him and say, excuse me, are you a fellow trucker? Because I just had one hell of an experience. He says, not a trucker, but... End quote. I think what the guy in the flannel would have finished, or like what the poster is implying he would have finished with that sentence, was that he had had similar experiences or a similar experience. I did think on this one a little bit because that exchange between him and the random trucker in the John Deere hat, or the random guy in the John Deere hat, it didn't sound the way that people really talk to one another, but he could have just been maybe adding a little bit in there. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. You know, that's my opinion. I'm not saying that's definitely what happened. I don't know. I don't know the guy. I wasn't able to like verify the story. I do believe the story. I just don't know. Let's put it this way. Sometimes people, when they give me their encounter stories or when they talk to me about things that have happened with them, they'll add to the story about how they know for a fact someone else has also experienced it. Because one, they don't want to feel alone. And two, if I look at them like they're a lunatic, which I would never do, but they don't know that, they can be like, no, I swear, so-and-so saw it too. And usually if you ask, where's so-and-so, can I speak to so-and-so? Oh, I don't know. And that's why it's usually a random stranger. I'm probably thinking too much into it. It's just the exchange didn't sound right. Either way, I've been doing a ton more research on vampires lately, guys. And what I'm finding out is that almost nothing we thought was actually real about vampires, like real vampires, not just people who drink blood and pretend to be vampires. Everything that we thought was real basically isn't, and there's a lot more evil going on with these particularly deadly yet highly beloved creatures than any of us could ever realize. I bring that up because although I won't be ready to discuss my findings about that for a while now because I'm still neck deep in research, I will say that I believe that's exactly what this man was dealing with that night, and had he gotten out of his truck, he more than likely would have ended up on the internet as part of some strange and mysterious disappearance story. I would more than likely have ended up covering his case for either this channel or Missing Persons and Mysteries. If you disagree or have a different theory, let me know in the comments below, please. And that's true for all of these encounters. Now, I'm not saying definitively that it was a vampiric encounter or encounter with an actual vampire, but I do feel like it is I feel like that's the most possible answer. It could have been a forest demon, a forest spirit. It could have been, you know, it could have been anything. But I do think vampire is more specifically the answer here. So I wasn't sure if this one was paranormal in nature or not, but I decided to include it anyway because of how utterly creepy it is, and how do we know what's behind any of these encounters in the first place? So I figured might as well tell my gemstones about it. The witness's name is Bear_like, and here's what he had to say. Quote, was driving north through the mountains of Colorado towards Pueblo, and it was my first time dealing with anything like the Rocky Mountains, so I was taking it nice and slow with my hazards on and in the right lane. This was in the spring, and there wasn't much snow on the ground aside from a light dusting. I remember passing another truck pulled to the shoulder on my way up, nothing out of the ordinary. However, as I was heading down the mountain, which can be scary as poop in an 18-wheeler, trust me, I saw the same truck I passed earlier fly by me in the left lane. Now, being passed on the left going downhill in the Rocky Mountains by another tractor trailer is wild enough. He's putting emphasis on these words. But what really makes this story is this guy's trailer brakes were on fire. Literally. He was pulling a load, could tell because the trailer was sealed, and if you know anything about trucks, you know there's only so much braking you're supposed to do before they overheat and, worst case, catch fire. This guy's truck looked like an effing comet as he sped down the mountain at what I thought was a surely deadly pace. I grabbed the mic to the radio and called out to him, "Hey driver, your brakes are on fire. I mean literally on fire." After a few seconds of static, a rough and weathered sounding voice came back over the speaker of my radio and said, cool as a cucumber, "I know." And he disappeared around a curve. I never saw any wrecked truck, emergency crews. I did see a discarded fire extinguisher on the ground at the base of the mountain though, end quote. Now, at first I thought, guys, okay, big deal. The guy overdid it and his truck caught fire. Nothing to see here. But as I kept reading, I knew that something strange was going on here, so just hear me out. So, while the trucker does say that the brakes catching fire is a possibility, especially with how the other vehicle seemed to be handling itself, I do think something else could have been going on here. I haven't covered vanishing vehicles yet here on this channel, but it is on my list and happens so much that I now just look at those cases and know more than likely it's something like a glitch in the Matrix or alternate realities visiting ours for some reason, something like that. The fact that the other trucker responded with, "I know," very calmly leads me to believe that he was not from this dimension and that perhaps the fire on the back of the truck had something to do with how he traveled back and forth from one dimension to another. That also leads me to question whether or not whoever that was in the other truck was human or not, but we'll never know for sure because, as always, that's the end of the encounter story, and as always too, I couldn't find anything else about it online. It is very weird though, and that one particularly, I would love to hear your thoughts. Here's another case that seemingly has something to do with either time travel or timeline jumping / dimension shifting, and I found it in Today Online. According to that source, a trucker and his companion were traveling on an 800-mile road trip from Camp Lejeune in North Carolina to Lafayette, Indiana. It was around 1 in the morning when they realized they were running out of gas somewhere near Indianapolis. Our witness goes on to explain that he had grown up in a trucker family and had decided to pull over to a truck stop, but the main interstates were shut down due to some severe inclement weather. So they had to get off of the main highway and search the back roads for a truck stop instead. They were desperately close to running out of fuel when they found a smaller truck stop literally out in the middle of nowhere. They were at first too relieved to really notice their surroundings, and that might be their first mistake. Once the elation started to wear off, they noticed how creepy and just plain off this small truck stop was. It only had one truck in the parking lot, and both of them had an unexplainable, eerie feeling. He described the truck as a blacked-out truck with a blacked-out trailer, and there had been no markings on it and nothing to distinguish it, meaning where it came from, what company owned it, etc. They got fuel and found a little tiny diner, also in the middle of nowhere and close to the strange truck stop with the even stranger truck, and decided to get something to eat while they were at it. As I thought back and went back to review the research, I just didn't put it in here and forgot. Of course I did. The diner was in the truck stop, not near it, in it. So these two weren't in a rush, they weren't hauling anything, and they were just enjoying the sights on a personal road trip, or so that's my understanding of the situation. In the diner was one waitress, one cook, and one truck driver, and two of them sat down to order. The whole time they were in the diner, they had a very strange and eerie feeling, but they really couldn't put their finger on what it was or why they were feeling this way. For some unexplained reason, and out of all of this, this is what threw me off. They had to ask the truck driver if they could borrow some money for gas. Now, I thought this was so strange, and since I don't know when this all went down, I can only speculate as to why they would have been on an 800-mile road trip without enough money for fuel. I'm thinking that credit cards were at least a thing and more than likely popular when this all happened, and, like me, they didn't carry cash on them at all. After all, cash can easily be stolen and spent before anyone even notices it's gone, and there's no way to really prove who stole your cash. So, while this is somewhat of a moot point, I had to think it through, and that's the only thing that made sense to me as to why they would have had to have borrowed money from a total stranger at a truck stop in the middle of nowhere. More than likely, the gas station didn't take cards or something because they obviously had enough money to eat and they were in a diner. But maybe not, as you'll see from his explanation of everything in a minute. Anyway, they said things became extremely strange and bizarre almost immediately after they had asked the trucker for some cash for fuel so they didn't run out. I'll let him tell the rest of his story. He said, quote, "I went inside, talked to this driver, and he bought us a cup of coffee. We sat there and talked for about 30 minutes and what was going on and where we were headed, where we were and what we were doing, and he gave us $20 for gas. I went outside, pumped our gas, came back in and told him, hey, I really appreciate it. I'll be back. When we arrived at about 10 o'clock in the morning, it was boarded up. It looked like it had been abandoned for years and the black truck was gone, but we just been in there. We pulled in anyway and found a police officer parked in the lot. Then we explained what happened just hours before, to which the cop chuckled and replied, quote, oh, you met the ghosts of 3. So, 2 truckers conversed, had a cup of coffee with, and interacted with 3 people at a diner that had a fuel pump. I got $20 worth of gas. When I came back, it had been boarded up for, if I remember correctly, the cop said it had been boarded up for the last 25 years, end quote. Did they accidentally time slip, or did they accidentally make their way into some sort of alternate reality just long enough to get a cup of coffee, have a pleasant conversation, and get some gas? I have a lot of thoughts on this one, but like with all the others, it would be nothing more than mere speculation because there's nothing more about any of this anywhere that I could find. And trust me, I did look. These types of middle of nowhere truck stops and, you know, out of the way diners, being there one moment and being gone the very next are very, very common. And there's one I've been looking for years. I heard it once, or I think I read it in research once. And I was like, oh, I'm going to come back to that because that is an incredibly interesting story. And I never wrote it down. And this was like 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And I can't find it anywhere. But once I do, you guys are in for a treat because it's really creepy. And most of these are. You know, because you're already traveling. You're already out of your comfort zone, away from anything, usually, that you know. So you pull into a diner where everything seems, usually though, everything doesn't seem completely normal. There's always some element to it that's like off somehow or like strange. And then when you go back for whatever reason, maybe you liked the food, maybe you thought it was weird and you want to bring someone else back. Either you can't find it, you find out it's been boarded up for like 25 years, or some other, you know, strange mystery occurs. It just really creeps me out. Reddit user Good for Nothing shared a post about a creepy event that he believed to be connected to his deceased father. In 1996, his father had died of a massive heart attack, and his family had talked him into going and spending some time with his mom. Why he had to be talked into that, I'm really not sure, and I don't know, but let's hear what he had to say about his experience. Quote, I was running low on cigarettes, and knowing my mother was with family, went to the local gas station to get a few more packs. As I pulled into the gas station, I had the feeling that my dad's soul just wasn't where it was supposed to be. Don't ask me why, that's how I felt. As I exited my car, a bum approached me and asked if he could wash my windshield for a little change. I pulled out a $5 bill and instead asked him if he would pray for my father, whom had just passed away. I gave him the money and he went to praying loudly, I might add, that it kind of embarrassed me. That's how he wrote that. I looked upon his face and I felt a great relief that all was as it should be now. I looked into his eyes and they were a color so piercing blue they could stop you in your tracks. I thanked him and asked him his name, and he answered, I'm Irish. Still dumbfounded, I bought my cigarettes and I went back home. Months passed, and every time I passed or went into that gas station, I looked for him. A few years later, I found him and asked if he remembered me and if his name was Irish. He said he did not remember me, but yes, his name was Irish. The thing that sent chills down my spine is his eyes were almost blackish brown. Not the blue I saw so clearly that mournful evening. I had been driving for almost a year as a commercial driver, being from California. I hadn't had much experience in snow and ice, but 6 months earlier, I was teaming with a classmate I went to truck driving school with, and he had jackknifed us in a blizzard 3 miles outside of Oakley, Kansas. So needless to say, I learned how to respect the winter conditions real fast. I was getting pretty good at driving the I-80 in all types of weather. Well, it was close to Christmas, and my mother had finally accepted my father's passing to the point she could finally smile again. I was doing short hops from Chicago to California and was totally exhausted trying to make it home for Christmas. I pulled into the Alamo truck stop and stopped for a break. It was December 23rd. I was contemplating getting a little sleep before going over the pass, but I knew that if I did, I might not wake up for a while. I figured I would let fate dictate my next move as the storm was approaching the summit. I stepped out of the truck to use the restroom and was walking behind a few other drivers. I was about 10 feet behind them when one of the drivers turned around and told me, quote, if you're trying to get home, you better go over the pass right now, end quote. I looked at him because I didn't know him. I had never talked to him. Then I saw those same blue eyes I had seen the night my father passed away. I think he means the night that he was praying for his father's soul or whatever. I didn't hesitate. I turned around, jumped in my truck, and headed up Donner Pass. As I went up the mountain, I turned the squelch on my CB all the way up to hear of any new road conditions, etc. I reached the second rest area as you're heading west and stopped to use the restroom there. As I left that rest area, I heard on the CB that they had shut the pass down behind me. The snow was falling pretty good, and had I not heeded that driver's words, I would have been stuck there during Christmas, as it stayed closed for a day and a half. I made it back to Los Angeles after dropping my load in Frisco, and my mother had a smile for the first time on Christmas since my father had passed away the Christmas before. To this day, if I see eyes like that, I listen to the words being spoken. I have never seen those eyes again, but I'm always looking." End quote. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is this was all one big run-on sentence, and when I was writing it, I fixed it as much as I could, but I guess I missed some. So if I was stumbling over the words a little bit, that is why. So did this guy encounter an angel? Was he implying that this was his father in spirit overtaking these people? I'm not really sure, because he doesn't say anything like, my father's eyes were the same color blue or anything like that. I think he was saying that he was so mournful about the death of his father that an angel was sent to bring him comfort and or watch over him. It's a bit strange to me, and I really don't know what to think, because both encounters with the piercing blue eyes were so incredibly different. In the first one, it was a prayer for peace, and in the second one, it was advice so he could get home to his kind of still grieving, but very much healing mother for Christmas in time. What I most believe could have happened here is that these were 2 times in his life where he inadvertently called in one of his spirit guides to help him, and the guide did just that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about that one. So there's this site I found called Suppose You Drive, and they have some really incredible encounters on there from truckers. So many, in fact, that I'm going to do a part 3 really soon. A lot of stories I came across had to do with picking up spirits in radio transmissions. This actually does make a lot of sense if you think about how EVPs work, the same way as CB radios do with all of the sweeps and channels, etc. There were so many stories on the site that I could have included here, but I thought it was more important to explain this phenomenon as it's happened at least once to almost every single trucker I've ever known or come across who had used a CB radio, and the site summed it up all really neatly, and I wanted to share what it said about it with you guys. The site said, quote, "In the solitary world of trucking, the CB radio stands as a lifeline connecting drivers to each other and the world beyond their cabs. But every so often, amidst the chatter and routine updates, some drivers encounter messages that defy explanation. Calls from the unknown, hailing from a frequency that resonates more with the otherworldly than the mundane. Many truckers during their long night drives have reported mysterious dispatches breaking through the static. Voices, sometimes clear, other times distorted, reach out seemingly from nowhere. Some tell of a lost driver desperately seeking directions to a destination that doesn't exist on any map. Others whisper tales of long-gone truckers reaching out for one last call, perhaps trying to send a distress signal or deliver an unfinished message from the past. These spectral transmissions have become the stuff of legend within the trucking community. Some drivers swear they've communicated with a fellow trucker named Eddie, who met his untimely end in the 1970s, yet still roams the airwaves, warning drivers of treacherous roads ahead. Another popular tale speaks of a woman's voice singing a lullaby late into the night, believed to be a mother searching for her child lost to the road." End quote. Another element to all of this that I came across pretty consistently into my research into trying to find trucker encounters is the idea of allegedly cursed cargo. So this would be something like truckers hauling things like cursed cargo, meaning haunted items or cursed items and the like. In going forward with the same article from the same site I just read to you from, here's what they had to say about that particular element of all of this. Quote, "One such tale recalls a driver who was transporting a collection of antique mirrors. Throughout his journey, he was plagued by reflections of a shadowy figure that wasn't there upon turning around. The delivery was completed, but the driver swore off transporting antiques ever again." Another story tells of a shipment of reclaimed wood destined for upscale renovations. As the trucker drove through the night, he reported hearing soft murmurs and the unmistakable sound of footsteps above the roar of his engine. Upon investigation, it was discovered that the wood was salvaged from a historic building known for its haunted past. While skeptics might chalk up these stories to fatigue, the effects of long hours on the road, or mere coincidences, they remain an integral part of the industry's lore. These tales serve as eerie reminders that sometimes the cargo carried might hold more than just material goods. They might bear the weight of history's memories and perhaps unsettled spirits. End quote. And I said, Yes, this is absolutely true, and went on to talk about the wood that was salvaged from the haunted house. But give me a moment on that because something just occurred to me. The antique mirrors guy seen the shadowy figure. So that could be that one or more of the mirrors had connections from the past owners and things like that. But if you think about mirrors, and I forgot what it's called, when you put mirrors like together to make that never ending, that is a portal. That is how you can open a portal wherever you are and let entities come and go. I don't recommend it. It's extremely dangerous, and more often than not, things from other dimensions, realms, realities come through on the negative side. So please don't do that. But the reason I bring it up is because, like, I would like to know how these mirrors were set up. He possibly could have had some sort of portal created in the background there and in the back of his truck, and not even, you know, like, how would he know that? Most people in everyday life, most average people don't know that. We always have to be careful when dealing with things like antiques, mirrors specifically, and I did a whole entire video as to why that's true. The haunted mirrors, or like why mirrors are usually haunted, something like that. Emotions, positive or negative, leave imprints on the entire area around them, and the energy sometimes doesn't go anywhere but seeps into things like the walls or the objects hanging on the walls, etc. The best example I found of this happening that I can give you is the wall that all of the men were put up against by the fake cops before they were shot and slaughtered in the St. Valentine's Day massacre. The EVPs that came off of those walls, as shown on several ghost hunting shows, are incredible, and I am a firm believer in energy imprinting on objects, like into the walls or even the wood used to build the place. It's pretty fascinating if you ask me, and I love listening to stories about cursed and or haunted items. But what about another phenomenon I keep coming across more and more, which is referred to as the black rig? This phenomenon is somewhat legendary in some places, and I hadn't ever heard of it at all until I started my research for this video. The same article said, quote, "This ghostly semi draped in shadows and often illuminated by piercing headlights has become a staple in the folklore of the open roads. Its mysterious appearances and eerie behavior have both alarmed and fascinated those who've encountered it, adding another layer of intrigue to the trucking world's haunted tapestry." Many truckers during their nocturnal journeys speak of encounters with this ominous semi. It often materializes seemingly out of thin air, its blinding headlights cutting through the night's darkness like a blade. Some tell tales of near misses, of narrowly avoiding collisions with the black rig, only to see it vanish into the ether. Others speak of glancing into their rearview mirrors and catching a fleeting glimpse of the dark truck tailing them, its form nebulous and constantly shifting, only to disappear as suddenly as it appeared. The origins of the black rig legend are as murky as the tales themselves. Some believe it's the spectral remnant of a trucker who met a tragic end, forever roaming the highways in his phantom rig. Others speculate it might be a manifestation of the collective fears and anxieties of the road, a symbol, if you will, of unknown dangers that lurk on desolate stretches of asphalt. There have been numerous accounts of sightings over the years. One driver spoke of a foggy night on a lonely highway in the Pacific Northwest when the black rig emerged from the mists, its headlights casting an otherworldly glow. Another recounted a drive through the deserts of the Southwest, where the truck appeared in the distance, its silhouette stark against the moonlit sands, only to vanish as the driver approached. Whether the black rig is a ghostly apparition, a figment of overactive imaginations, or something else entirely, remains an indelible part of trucking lore. Its stories serve as eerie reminders that the road is full of mysteries and that sometimes the journey is as enigmatic as the destination, end quote. I definitely do not think that all of those people who have claimed to have seen or encountered this phantom rig are having some sort of joint collective hallucination, all independent of one another and without ever having met one another either. It's as ridiculous to me as saying shadow beings showing up during sleep paralysis are nothing more than the figments of the imaginations of thousands upon thousands of people who have actually experienced these beings, again, all independent of one another and throughout the ages, throughout millennia. It just makes no sense, and personally, I could never understand how anyone could ever believe in that lie, knowingly, just to pretend that the truth isn't the truth, if that makes sense. Another very strange story was related to a source called the Midland Daily News. I'm unsure whether this is a newspaper or just an online site, but the encounter was too good to pass up and not put in this video. So let's talk about it. This bizarre encounter has the poster explaining about how he shot a dog man. In 2017, a 59-year-old trucker named Joe Barger was traveling through the Manistee National Forest when he had an experience with what he believes to have been a dog man. And this experience made him brand new, meaning he was never the same again after what he had experienced. And whether you believe in his encounter or not, something definitely changed him that night out there. It started with him realizing he had an air leak while he was driving. He stopped to look at it and see what the damage was because he intended to fix it before he ended up too far into the forest to do so. And the last thing that he wanted was to become stranded out there in the dark and creepy forest in the middle of nowhere in unknown territory, etc. The first thing was that he started to hear what he described as, quote, unnatural noises, end quote, while at the same time spotting a strange looking shadow among the trees. It wasn't that far away from him, and he immediately just assumed it was a bear. Once he recognized the shadow, he started feeling an inexplicable sense of danger and dread that completely overwhelmed him. He kept at what he was doing, though, and he upped the pace because he was just desperate to get the heck out of there and back on his way through the forest at that point. So finally he was done, and he quickly got back into his rig and continued driving, but when he looked in his rearview mirror, he saw something. He was interviewed about it on the YouTube channel What Lurks Beneath, and here's some of what he had to say about his terrifying and bizarre encounter. Quote, there was a wolf head the size of my window, and my windows were down. He was trotting along next to me, and I was about 20 to 25 miles per hour at that point. And he was stooping down on two legs, looking down inside of my cabin. I'm at 9 feet tall in my seat. His hands were coming up, scratching my windowsill. On my door handle, I could hear his claws. Time slowed down. I thought I was in like an alternate reality or something because a creature like this doesn't exist in any reality I've ever known of. I have heard of Bigfoot, and I know those to be something that's always talked about, but this is a whole different thing altogether. It has a lot of sharp teeth, and the teeth on this thing were like brilliant white. 3-inch long fangs, bottom and top, pure black pointed ears. It had yellow eyes with human-like hands, probably 14 inches across. It was at least 10 feet tall from how it was stooping into my cabin. His yellow eyes were darting all over the place and looking at me. How this creature looked was mad and determined to get at me. It was sneering. He wasn't making any noises vocally, but the looks he was giving me and the intelligence in his eyes was telling me, quote, I'm here to get you and there's nothing you can do about it, end quote. I pulled out my .45 Colt strapped to my waist and took 2 shots at the creature. He instantly went down. I was looking at him as he was sliding into the weeds. I was almost point blank range, so I'm pretty sure I got him through the eye orbit. His head was huge. Everything on this animal was black except his teeth and his eyes. I wasn't really panicked, but it's the scaredest I've ever been in my life, end quote. So he wanted to see if he had killed the beast, and so he turned around and went looking for it. He never found any sign that anything had ever been out there at all, let alone any signs that he had shot and injured or killed some sort of animal or creature. He's adamant that there's some sort of government conspiracy and cover-up going on regarding the Dogman entity specifically, as he said he was told in no uncertain terms by several authority figures not to ever mention what he had seen and experienced out there. There's no more information, unfortunately, but if you go to the YouTube channel What Lurks Beneath here on YouTube, you can hear him tell the story for yourself. I haven't watched it yet, so I haven't grabbed the link, but it shouldn't be too hard to find. It's here on YouTube, the channel What Lurks Beneath, and the guy who had the encounter, his name is Joe Barger, or Barger, Barger, like burger, but with an A. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out and spending this time with me, and if you watched in the premiere and you enjoyed hanging out with one another. Please spread the love by sharing this video, the channel, as I'm recording this video is almost at 5,000 subs. I am reworking the channel. I am redoing a lot of things. A lot of things will be the same, but some things will be different. I'm adding some things. I am currently taking donations, not only for the channel as usual, but also for Power Unity. I'm going to be vending there, hopefully, and just need to, you know, kind of get my stuff in order. The only pay I get is from ad revenue and donations. So links in the description box. PayPal, Cash App, my Amazon wish list gift link, becoming a member, becoming a patron on Patreon, tongue-tied there. So what I do with patrons is if you donate or pledge $20 a month or more, you are automatically put on my reading list. So not like a book reading list, but like my intuitive oracle reading. You will get a remote general reading every single month, as long as I have, you know, don't have too many. If I have too many, I'll break it down and I'll do them in 3-month increments. So you'll all get a reading, you know, but like on different months for 3-month time periods. There is a lot of new stuff coming to the Gemma Jade channel. I am almost totally rebranding, but again, keeping a lot of things the same. If I don't start getting more views on these videos, I'm going to have to scrap them, but I promise I will not do that until I find something to replace them. And then I'll just do like much shorter videos like this, because I know a lot of you do like these videos, and just because it's not getting views, I don't want to take away what you like. So anyway, I'm rambling as I usually do. If you need to get in touch with me, send me your supernatural, paranormal, extraterrestrial, otherworldly encounters. For any correspondence to purchase a signed copy of any of my books, you can email me at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. That's also in the description box. Links to my books on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, and Audible. There's 10 or 11 books now. Okay, so if every single link, you know, isn't in the description box, I may not have been able to fit it. Just go to Amazon and search Gemma Jade Books. Also, and this is the most important thing, guys, if you've purchased any of my books in any format, please go to Amazon, rate it 5 stars, give it a review. I think you have to leave a review if you rate. So rate 5 stars. And if you don't feel like writing a review, just be like, great book, love this book, author is awesome. You know, whatever you want to say, because it really does help. Because people that like to troll me can go and give me 1 star. They've never purchased my book. They know nothing about me except they don't like the look of me, or they whatever. And they'll bring my rating down, and then my books won't get pushed out. I've talked enough. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody told you today, you are amazing. Abundance is your birthright. You can do and be anything you want. You just really have to believe in yourself. And that is not a terrible cliche. That is actually something that is very, very true. Let go of the negativity. Embrace the positivity. Switch your energy up as best as you can to be in line with the abundance, meaning believing that you are abundant, expecting abundance like you expect the sun to rise every single morning. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time.